Hello and welcome to the MMQB NFL podcast. I'm Conor. Albert Breer is here. I'm up in my living room because this is my flu game. Everyone is sick in my house. I just got over the stomach flu as an adult, which I didn't know the depths of pain and sorrow that provides.
Oh, it sucks.
So, holy God.
I'm now a decade into being a parent, and so I think I've seen the gamut now. Knock on wood. Maybe it's I'd hope there's not something worse coming, but all those childhood sicknesses that you thought were gone come back because these schools that they go off to are petri dishes where lots of different viruses live and metastasize. And I don't know what was the worst. Hand, foot, and mouth was going around, which I think sounds worse than it is. You know what I mean? That just sounds disgusting.
Yeah.
So there are I don't know if chicken pox exists anymore. That was a big one when I was a kid. But yeah, so we've I've been through all of that. I've been through a few that really knocked me out. There was I remember and we can talk about this part of it too if you want, but some of these things are marked by Ohio State games for me. So I remember being just completely laid out for the 2022 Rose Bowl, in which Ohio State just crapped all over itself in the first half, and then C.J. Stroud threw for 600 yards in the second half, and we won. And I was so laid up and sick for that. I will never forget what I felt for that more than anything that happened in that game. So yeah, I'm very well versed, and I'm feeling a little under the weather for very childish reasons today too, just because I haven't gotten over Saturday yet.
I was going to say, was there anything kind of significant that happened for you in a football-related context this weekend? Or
yeah, it sucks. It sucks, especially losing to them. And I don't know. I won't dive into the full gamut of what Michigan people are versus the rest of the Big Ten. And everybody who went to a Big Ten school outside of Michigan or Northwestern knows what I'm talking about. And I'm not talking about the fake Big Ten schools like UCLA. But anybody who went to school at a Big Ten school in that part of the country knows what I mean when I say it's the worst losing to them because of the way they carry themselves and the way that when they're not good at something, you'll never hear from them. And when they are good at something, you'll never hear the end of it from them. And it's yeah. So anyway, and it's just, I won't get myself started. I'll get myself in trouble if I do that. But yeah, and it's set up as the perfect Saturday too, because my flight was on time. The seats I had were tremendous.
Were you there? You were there.
30 of my college buddies are there. Yeah, I mean, I had phenomenal seats, and the end zone that I was right in front of the. Was right in front of one of the end zones, in the first row there. And Ohio State did not reach that end zone the whole day.
Good Lord.
Just an embarrassing day. Yeah. Shouldn't have happened against that Michigan team for sure. But here we are. Thanks, Wank.
That's what's up, baby.
Yeah,
Wink Martindale.
There it is.
That was... I mean, I had a slightly better college football weekend. I mean, Notre Dame is my primary team, and then I've kind of adopted Army, so we got two big wins.
No Syracuse, though, because I thought I might get the hanging on the rim Kyle McCord here, but no.
No, I mean, Syracuse, I covered I covered that team for 4 years pretty aggressively in college, and I feel like I just had a different fan experience than everyone else. My entire life cycle as a sports fan in Syracuse was so the SID there was legendary, great woman Sue Etson, and she would call you at 6 o'clock in the morning to complain about what was in the student newspaper the next day. And a lot of times we would put the paper to bed at 3:30, right? So you get that call. And she's ready to go to battle. She's ready to, tell you what you did wrong, right, wrong, and different, and ready to ream you out. And so I just have such a different perspective. I can't bring myself to love this team. I mean, I got chewed out by Jim Boeheim so many times that it's just how do you look at this team and be yeah,
I think we all have that experience though. I can't root for pro sports teams the same way anymore because of covering them. I just can't. And it's weird because like the way I justify it in my head is that I have an actual tangible connection to where I went to school, obviously. And like like I view that like in my own head, and I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but in my own head, I view that as way more tangible than, well, I grew up in this place that's near to this other place where these four teams play, you know? Especially, and maybe this is why for me, but I mean, I grew up in Boston and I have no connection to that region outside of the fact that I grew up there. Like my dad's from Detroit, my mom's from Austria. I have zero connection to the area that goes beyond just me and my brother, So, so yeah, man, it's like it's a little different because like, I mean, people would give me crap about the Celtics the last couple of years in the playoffs, and it was like didn't really bother me at all. But I want to like light them on fire when they say something about Ohio State. So it's a different level.
Yeah, I mean, I think that makes some sense. I always
The lighting people on fire thing.
the lighting people on fire thing. I mean, I feel
Yeah.
that. I always I have a hard time gauging like adult fandom, and so sometimes I don't like I don't really love anything in sports anymore, and so it is interesting to me like when I press a button and I make fun of someone's team and to see the reaction, and I'm like, oh, you're a 37-year-old man and you care about this, these children
And
that are playing these games,
I'm legitimately like that with Ohio State. Like I legitimately care. It still what happened Saturday still bothers me. It ruined my weekend. Like it ruined my trip when I got to see 30 of my college friends, which is the great thing about going to a school like that is like, and I think I don't know how many schools are like that where you go back for a football game and like I minimum will see 20 of my college friends and at a game like this, it'll be more than that. So I like what should have been like just an incredible day at 3 o'clock was completely ruined and I couldn't pick myself up to enjoy the rest of the day. I like stood at a bar for 3 hours after that, had no fun, went out to dinner and like went to sleep at like 9 p.m. to catch a 6:05 flight out. Oh,
Oh man.
I'm a very mature person. So,
Well,
but hey, we can still. I like for the first time, like everybody always asks that question, like, if would you rather win the national title or beat Michigan? And like for the first time, like I might realistically be able to like really reckon with that question,
Yeah.
So we'll
Yeah.
see what happens.
Well, I mean, the good thing for you is you at least had a better weekend than Matt Eberflus, and we should start
did.
there.
Yeah.
So before we get into the weekend slate of games, and we'll do Black Friday too. So the Bears let go of head coach Matt Eberflus, and I'll just say this, like, my Thanksgiving football watching experience is pretty like benign. Like I'll go back and I'll watch the games later because I really do want to spend that time with family. But the end of that Bears game brought together the entire house, and there were just everybody, even in passing, kind of immediately locked into that final moment. And everyone's like, "What is he doing? What is he doing? What is he doing? Why isn't he throwing the ball?" And it was one of those moments where, as soon as I saw it, I was like, "Well, Chicago doesn't do this. They don't make head coaching changes in season, but I think they're going to do this." And I ended up being right on that. But here's my takeaway, and then I'm interested to kind of hear from you where they go next. So Thomas Brown was named the interim head coach, and I think this is interesting because the Bears love their special teams coordinator. Talk about him up and down.
Hightower, yeah.
Yeah, as one of the kind of great special teams coordinators in the NFL. Would have made all the sense in the world to make him the interim head coach. That way, Thomas Brown gets to continue his relationship with Caleb Williams, doesn't get strung too thin like Jeff Ulbrich did in New York. But I do think that there is probably the smallest, I mean, my read on it is maybe they're giving him a chance to go on a run here because Thomas Brown has been a head coaching candidate. He interviewed for head coaching jobs in the past, former assistant head coach for Sean McVay in Los Angeles with the Rams. So there's that. But then there's also like, this has to be a monumental blow the doors off of you hire if Thomas Brown doesn't go on a run here and somehow lock the job down.
I mean, well, all right. So like my first thought, I just want to kind of like put a bow on the end of that game. And like, it's just how many levels there were to it. Like, I, it's like to not have a second play ready to go when he takes the sack, right? And to not have like the quarterback like know that he's got to hurry the team to the line and to snap the ball with the timeout in your back pocket and having just completely taken another snap off the table to me was completely inexplicable. And it is in part Caleb's fault because he's the one out there.
Right.
But I always come back to, look, man, you have a rookie quarterback out there. Like, you need to be prepared for this situation. You can't operate as if that's Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers or Peyton Manning back. You can't operate that way. It's not who it is. It's not Mahomes back there. You know what I mean? Like, that's a rookie. So you have to treat the situation accordingly. So anyway, like that's where I stand on that. Um, I think that I think they're going to give Thomas Brown a legitimate shot at it. I think, my understanding is they've been impressed with his work so far. Now, like, this is an interesting ascension for him because really his only previous play calling experience was like in a weird fire drill situation. I think twice last year, right in Carolina, didn't he?
Yes.
He got it, he didn't have it at first, got it, then got it taken away, then got it back or something like that. Is that right? I think.
Got it back, but I think if I remember correctly, wasn't even in the quarterback room, was like almost like designing an offense while not being in the quarterback room. Like, so that whole situation was a mess.
This is like so he is gone in a month's time from pass game coordinator, which is sort of like a walk around position, to offensive coordinator with play calling, to now head coach and and I assume still play caller. I know that's the assumption a lot of people that are working off of, that he's going to remain the play caller to give Caleb some continuity. That's a lot. And so, I have talked to people there who said he's been a stud through this and the way he's handled it and everything else. The flip side is like, that's a lot of responsibility for one guy in any circumstance, but especially for a guy who's still learning how to be a play caller and is going to have to learn how to be a head coach.
Yep.
And so I think he's got a lot of the qualities of a good head coach, and he's shown that to people in the building over the course of the last month and how he's handled all this transition and worked with the quarterback and everything else. But man, that's a lot to ask, isn't it?
That's a lot to ask.
So if he nails it, then do you have to give him the job?
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned it briefly before, but I mean, we saw this with Woody Johnson and Jeff Ulbrich, right? Jeff Ulbrich was doing a good job designing that defense, and then you want to give him a run as the interim head coach, and so you put a little bit more on his plate. You try to put him in a position where you're getting a look at him as a possible head coaching candidate, but it's impossible to do everything, right? And as a result, like Ulbrich, again, I think he will one day be a good head coach, but is just stepping on landmine after landmine after landmine because he doesn't have an opportunity to be good at either of the things that he should be good at, And so this is a big challenge for Thomas Brown. Sometimes when you're a coach, I find like Thomas Brown, right, where you come through the running back room, you have to kick down the doors a little bit, and if you're not going to get that traditional chance at a head coaching job, you have to, put your arms around it any way possible. And so this is one of those situations where, maybe he tries to make the best of it. I really do think that they would love it if he took off and everything made sense and it worked and they could keep a lot of this staff intact. But this staff is also going to need a lot of repairing work. I mean, remember, they lost their defensive coordinator, and so this is one of those situations where, we don't know what it's going to look like. My immediate thought when I was kind of texting around to people in the industry, I mean, a lot of people are saying, okay, Ben Johnson, Cliff Kingsbury, Johnson, Cliff Kingsbury. You were saying that you don't think it necessarily
I don't think that's what they
need.
I mean, if they get that as part of the package, then like, great, that's awesome. Like, I think it's a bonus, but like, I just look at like how this organization has handled everything over the last month and what a mess it's been. And, it's like Shane Waldron goes through a Monday, fired Tuesday. Matt Eberflus and his staff, just for the people who haven't heard it, what like that looked like. So after the game on Thursday, I think a lot of the anger at Eberflus from the locker room was that he wasn't taking accountability for things.
Hmm.
So they had close losses to the Packers. There was one other one, the Commanders, of course, and then the Vikings, in which there were like late game failures like this. Maybe not as stark, but late game failures like this. Washington was as stark, but so after the Vikings game, and he finally apologized to the players. He said, "I fouled that up, took accountability for it." And then he comes back 4 days later and doesn't take accountability for this one, which is where I think things got ugly in the locker room post game. I had heard Jalen Johnson was, and we talked about this on Amazon on Friday. I had heard Jalen Johnson was one of the louder voices in the locker room post game, but it was not a good scene. And here's the thing: I think it was pretty clear to everyone in that room that a change was coming. So why did you wait to fire him? You okay? So he goes to his press conference Thursday. That's normal. Like whatever. Like you're probably not going to fire him the minute you come off the field. I get it. But then Friday morning, the coaches show up and go through their normal day after game routine. They go through their meetings, everything else. So at noon, they're set to be off for the weekend. And then, after going through whatever it is, 5, 6 hours of all of that stuff, at 11 o'clock, Matt Eberflus calls the staff and tells them he's fired and says Thomas Brown's going to take over for him. 20 minutes later, Ryan Poles and Brown come in to address the group. I just look at the handling of this, add it to the handling of Shane Waldron, add it to a lot of different things that have happened there over the last 10 to 15 years and how they've kind of swung back and forth and back and forth. So they go from Lovie Smith to the offensive guru in Mark Trestman to the old defensive Super Bowl coach in John Fox, then back to the offensive guru in Matt Nagy, and then to the defensive program guy in Matt Eberflus. It's just you have no identity. You're swinging back and forth. You know what I mean? That's
God,
how
I forgot about the
organizations.
John Fox era.
Yeah, and but that's what bad organizations do, right? So I'm sorry, I don't think I developing Caleb Williams is obviously paramount. I don't think what they need right now is a guy whose head's going to be buried in a play sheet. You know what I mean? I don't think that's what they need. I think they would need what the Lions needed 3 years ago. Which, I mean, maybe it's Mike Vrabel, maybe it's Bill Belichick, maybe it's Aaron Glenn. I don't know, but I feel like they need somebody who's going to come in there and give them these things that maybe they were lacking the last few years and give the organization direction. And maybe most importantly, a guy who's got the stomach to say no to the people in the front office and say no to ownership and tell ownership what they're doing wrong, and what they've done wrong over the years. It's sort of I can remember, Mike Zimmer didn't get a job for a long, and Mike Zimmer's wait to get a head coaching job took forever and ever and ever. And one of the things you kept hearing was how it was because he would get in these interview settings and he would tell the team exactly where they were messed up and exactly what they were doing wrong. And a lot of owners didn't want to hear that. You know what I mean? Because these guys are captains of industry and how dare this football coach come in here and tell me what we're doing wrong?
Right.
But that's exactly what the Bears need,
Yeah.
So I don't know, I don't know if hiring just a quarterbacks guy accomplishes that. You know what I mean?
What they should do is trade for Kevin Stefanski. But anyway.
I don't mind that idea because he kind of gives you both, right?
Right. He'll bring in good offensive staff.
He has experience going into a dumpster fire because that's
he
what
knows the division really well.
Yep.
Been with the Vikings for a long time. Belichick is interesting though because Caleb Williams has always said that he doesn't want to run around. He doesn't want to move. He wants to get rid of the ball. He wants to be a pocket passer. Josh McDaniels will make that happen.
And you know what the cool thing about that is you're probably not at the same risk for losing your offensive coordinator in that spot that a lot of other defensive coaches would be.
And you would break. What did he already break Hallis? And he just has to catch Shula, or did he?
I think that's it. Yeah, but there is that appeal, no question, of breaking Shula's record with Hallis's team.
It's kind of cool. I don't know. I
Yeah.
never thought of that.
And so like, and Josh McDaniels, like, say what you will about his work with Tom Brady, like last time he worked with a rookie quarterback, that rookie quarterback was, I mean, would have been rookie of the year that year if it hadn't been for Jamar Chase, you know?
Yeah, that's
I
true.
mean, and Mac Jones has not been the same since not working with Josh McDaniels anymore. So there's good experience there too. Like again, like I don't know that Josh McDaniels is going to get a third shot at being a head coach. So if you hire Bill, you bring him in, like he can shake your program up. You've got an offensive coach on staff who probably isn't going to leave, and you're able to take advantage of the window that you have while Caleb's on his rookie contract. I think it makes sense for a lot of different reasons. But again, it's going to take ownership having the stomach to hand some things over, and I also think it probably would mean, like, at the very least, moving some people around in the front office, if not getting rid of some people, to allow Bill to set it up the way he wants to set it up,
People
which was
don't
part of
like
the problem
trimming
in
that.
Atlanta.
People don't like trimming that fat when Belichick comes in, but that's always been a big part of the story. What is Underdog? Underdog is the place to play if you're a sports fan looking to win money while watching sports. With over 5 million happy players and $2 billion won, Underdog makes it fun and easy to cash in on all your favorite athletes' performances. Just call your shot by picking higher or lower on 2 or more players' stats. Underdog is for everyone, so you can make a play with only $1 or go big and win up to 1,000 times your money. So turn every touchdown into a win with Underdog. Underdog is the best place to cash in on all your takes this football season. Which players are going off? Which ones are ice cold? Make your picks in just a few taps and turn your sports opinions into real money. Try Red Zone Rush, a game that you're not going to find anywhere else. Just pick whether or not a player will score a touchdown by swiping right for yes and left for no. It's as simple as that. Plus, your entry will be automatically boosted and you'll get a 51% profit boost when you play. Join over 5 million fans that are already playing on Underdog with their Pick'em game, and you could win money by making entries with your favorite players. Underdog is the best place to play Pick'em, so sign up now and deposit using promo code MMQB to get up to $1,000 in bonus cash instantly. Now, I'm not a gambler, but I have friends who are on Underdog, and they love it because it's easy. You don't have to learn about all the jargon. You don't have to learn about overs and unders and stats and all this kind of different stuff. You can just pick higher or lower. You can just pick whether or not a team's going to score or not. It's a good intro app. Download the app today and use code MMQB to get up to $1,000 in bonus cash instantly. That's MMQB for $1,000 in bonus cash instantly. Every player, every touchdown. Just select higher or lower on Underdog. You must be 18 years or older, 19 in Alabama and Nebraska, 19 in Colorado for some games, 21 and older in Massachusetts and Arizona, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Void in Colorado. Are you concerned with your play? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit ncpgambling.org. In Arizona, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT STEP to 53342. In New York, call the 24/7 Hope line at 1-877-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. That's 467-369. All right, so let's get into the Sunday slate, and like I said, we'll mix the Black Friday game in there as well. But I want to start with the Eagles and the Ravens. 24-19, Philadelphia wins. I went back and I rewatched this game on NFL Pro. By the way, but I should say this: I complained about NFL Game Pass for like 5 years. NFL Pro is awesome.
I need a tutorial for you on how to use it properly, because I get on there and I'm just like, whoa, it's like too much. You know what I mean?
It's like we got nothing for 5 years, and then all of a sudden we were given, not exactly what NFL teams get, right? NFL teams have far more overlays and they can look stuff up quicker and they can make cut-ups a lot easier, but this morning I was able to go on and say, okay, give me every play that Jalen Carter was on the field for defense. And then I get like an all 22 and I can watch, all of Jalen Carter's snaps. I can watch every time Jalen Hurts runs. I can watch anytime,
That's awesome.
Cut it up. So NFL Pro has been awesome. And as much as I complained about NFL Game Pass, and I will say this, I complained about NFL Game Pass so much that one
they
time
created NFL Pro.
that someone from Game Pass emailed me and was just like, what can we do to fix this? Like,
Oh, did they really?
Yeah. And so there was a genuine concern there, I think, on their part. And, it was appreciated.
About you?
Well, just that I complained about it so much,
Yeah.
and now I feel bad that I haven't gone out of my way to say that NFL Pro is awesome. But NFL Pro is awesome. If you're into that kind of thing, I highly suggest it. And Christmas right around the corner, treat yourself. But Eagles, you have some great items on Saquon Barkley that I want to get to that are up on the website right now. But this defense is unbelievable. The way that they handled Baltimore last night, it's these defensive tackles, like not just Jalen Carter, but like Milton Williams. And like these guys can each suck up like 2 defenders consistently. They're hyper athletic. Like you almost don't need pass rushers when you have these guys, and they're allowing them to play such a unique style of defense. Like these, everyone was talking about how great the linebackers are playing yesterday, but Eagles are just swallowing up blockers. Like these guys can run right through the line, and yes, you're tackling Derrick Henry, which needs to be mentioned here and praised. But also, it's because these guys are just eating up space, and Vic Fangio's just got this unit dialed up, man.
Yeah, and I like it. I think I saw Ross Tucker compare Jalen Carter on Twitter to Jerome Brown, which was pretty high praise. He is like the level to which like he like is disruptive now, and they've kind of got him on the right path is really impressive, because I do think like he should have been the 2nd or 3rd pick in the draft in 2023, based on talent alone. He was the most talented guy on the Georgia team in 21 when he wasn't even starting. Won back-to-back national titles with really good defenses, and you see what a guy like that, who's really a unicorn, can do for you, in that like there aren't very many. There just aren't, like, as much as teams value edge rushers, that sort of guy is more rare. Like it's harder to find a Jalen Carter than it is to find, a Nick Bosa. You know what I mean? Like it's just there just aren't very many of them. Like Chris Jones, Aaron Donald. So, and I know I'm talking about him in rarefied air, and he's got to be consistent and do it over time to get there. But you're right, he's been an absolute force. And then I thought the way they closed the game out, just the approach and attitude they had running the ball. I think it was like 10 straight runs on that last possession after they covered like 50 yards in the drive before to score the touchdown that made it a 2-possession game. The Eagles are winning up front again. And I know we've talked about this, but like what a credit to like Howie Roseman and his department that like this is happening in the first year post Jason Kelce and post Fletcher Cox.
Yeah. And without Brandon Graham,
Right.
I think that the defining moment of this season, and by the way, I was totally right. I did my 100. I was totally right on 2 accounts. Milton Williams, I had as my most underrated player, one of my NFC most underrated players heading into the season. I nailed that one. The second prediction that I made back in June was that Cooper DeJean would become a Philadelphia institution. This is just a city that would, I think, generally take to a white cornerback and the idea of having one. But now his tackle.
So it's like Boston with the white slot receiver.
Yeah, or like Brian Scalabrine, right? Or whatever, or all those guys, right? Like I think
Welker,
Philly,
Amendola.
Yeah,
Elman,
that kind of thing, right? But his tackle of Derrick Henry with 7 minutes to go in the 4th quarter, open field tackle, and there's a lot of mitigating factors here. He didn't blow up Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry was tired. He caught the ball in a weird position, but Cooper DeJean lifts him up and plants him into the ground. They will show that clip. They will show that tackle before Eagles games for the next 10 years. That is a season rallying cry play. Mm-hmm. I thought it was cool that the team had highlighted a lot of guys were mic'd up. And Nick Sirianni has done an amazing job of just being like, hey, if you guys think that you get this 4th down, then let's just do it. If you guys think that we can do this, then go ahead and do it. And I think that was the message that he got from the players when they were struggling at the beginning of the season. He's kind of turned this thing over to them, and there's no way that that can be inconsequential when it comes to, I mean, this is what now, an 8-game winning streak they're on right now?
Yeah. Yeah. Is it 9? No. No, it's 8. It's 8, right? Because they're 10 and 2. They're 10 and 2.
As a bald guy, never underestimate the power of shaving your head, which Nick did at the beginning of this.
I meant to ask him about that when I was talking last night and forgot to.
Also, never underestimate. Do you remember, like, and you know, we have different jobs. You know, a lot of times, like, I have to give an opinion on something, and sometimes columns age really well. Sometimes columns age really poorly. Philadelphia.
And which one do people remember?
The ones that age really poorly.
Yeah.
No one's like, wow. But when the day after the Browns signed Deshaun Watson, I outlined everything that was going to happen with this team, and I was 100% right. And one person tweeted that back to me like 3 years later, and like, wow, this is crazy that you nailed this. I was like, yeah, thank you. But everybody else, you know, just, oh, remember when you said this? But Philadelphia just crushed. Remember they crushed Sirianni for bringing his kids to the podium after they beat something that he's done often, by the way, and just like waxed. Like, that city is brutal. Like, Joel Embiid pushed a reporter for like criticizing his dead brother or something like that. Like, that city is just like, you know, it's tough, man. You know,
I mean, and I think, like, I don't know, like at first, like, you maybe think, like, after that press conference, like that. After his opening press conference, a lot of people thought, like, Nick wasn't really, like, built to deal with all of that. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
And it's like the opposite has been true. Like, he doesn't care what they think. Like, he's just going to go coach football, and he's just unabashedly himself. And I don't know where it comes from, but he's got this confidence to react to criticism the way that he does. And that was one thing that I talked to him about last night. I said, like, do you think it's at all crazy that you made the playoffs 3 times in a row in your first 3 years, the first time head coach, you made the Super Bowl on the second of those years, and like you went into this year and all anybody wanted to talk about was your job security? And his answer, hold on, I'm going to pull it up because I have it here. It was. Yeah, he said the good thing about the good thing about my wife, she doesn't read anything, she doesn't listen to anything. She's got 3 kids to raise without me right now. She's got her head down. She's working hard. If I'm going to tell these guys control what you can control, that's such a big part of our mindset. Next play mentality, control what you can control, and things will take care of themselves. So obviously you hear it, you got to prepare for the media, and I got to do questions, but I got to practice what I preach. And if I'm going to tell these guys not to listen when the word is out that we're not any good, or the word's out that we're really good, then I need to do the same thing. That's all I've tried to do.
It's so funny that, like, I wonder what my wife would say if, like, I was, you know, just, she's a grinder, you know, next play mentality, you know, kid, you know, Jesus, coaches are just coaches. Let's flip over
he's
to the
great too, because he comes from a family full of coaches. So
yes.
You know, like he is like, I'll still never forget 2 years ago when they got the bye at the end of the regular season. He so I was going to do a call with him after the game, and he asked if he could call me like a couple hours after the game because he was like organizing something. Well, it turns out what they were organizing was for them to all go and sit in one of the coaches' backyards and drink beer. And it was Kevin Patullo, their pass game coordinator. I think it was his backyard because for one reason or another, they couldn't do it at Nick's house that night. And so he was really excited about it. And I asked him why. And he's like, really, this is because I come from like a family full of high school coaches, and this is what they do on Friday nights after the games. And we can never do it because we're either traveling or we have to go in and break down the film right away. So he's like, I was so excited to get the bye so we could actually do this, like what my dad and my brothers did on Friday nights after games. So
That's
he's a football coach, like more than most other people are football coach. You know, like everybody who coaches in the NFL are real football coaches, but he's a really real football coach.
He is.
Yeah.
Over on the Ravens side, I mean,
right on down to like his assessment of his wife.
Yeah, try that at home, everybody. See how that works out for you guys. In Baltimore, Lamar has been not as good as he was over the past few weeks. They've struggled with the deep ball. Derrick Henry looked human in this game, but I think oddly, for a team with a special teams coordinator as a head coach, one of the few teams in the NFL with a kicking specific coach on the roster. I mean, this Justin Tucker thing has come to the point now
Bananas,
where, yeah, and Harbaugh was like, yeah, I'm not moving on from him. Like, we're not doing that. And if you look, like, I think. I mean,
do you create like a phantom injury to sit him down for a bit?
So that's that's something that I think makes a lot of sense. My buddy Dan Hansis floated that last night when we were doing the Heed the Call show. Just say like, hey, and he has been dealing with some hip issues, and so you could say like, just get him a couple of weeks here, because you don't want to kickers age well. I mean, Justin Tucker can be good until he's 43, 44 years old. There's just something that he's not seeing right now. Like, you look at the game last night, and he's like, why isn't this hooking? Like, he's expecting it to hook back in. There's just something that's happening to him with the contact on the ball, with whatever it is. I mean, I think you noticed it with, all the greats have gone through it. Tiger Woods went through it, right? Where there was a couple of months or a couple of years where he just couldn't hit a golf ball the right way. And if you want to get into the yips territory where,
I was going to say, like, it sounds like you're talking about the yips.
Yeah, I mean, I never want to put that on someone because that is just monumentally awful. But I give Harbaugh a lot of credit. Not only has, you constantly see him talking with Tucker during the game. Last night when they scored at the end of that game, now the field goal or the 2-point conversion wasn't consequential, but he wanted Tucker to go out there and kick that extra point with like whatever it was, 3 seconds left in that game, just to get him out and get him going again. We've seen kickers. It wasn't Brandon Aubrey. Who was before Brandon Aubrey in Dallas that had just a nightmare of a time towards the end of the year? It was like a veteran, but Mike McCarthy wanted him to kick through it, So some of these guys, that's the idea behind it. But are you setting yourself up, if you're John Harbaugh, for the situation where this thing legitimately costs you a playoff victory, right? And how heartbreaking would that be,
Right. If that's like, and then like, if you have to move on from him after the year, then that becomes like the end of his time in Baltimore, which is all really hard. It's not an easy scenario because kicking's a zero-sum game and everybody gets to see. It's not like a struggling offensive tackle or a struggling linebacker where like some of their issues might get kind of like lost in the wash. Like the issues are right there for everybody to see. A lot of them are coming in critical spots, and I'm not totally against the idea of like sitting him down. I don't know if you IR him, but like sitting him down for a couple of weeks and letting him kick through it without all of this swirling around him. You know what I mean? Like, he's too important and too good, and I think the high end is probably still there somewhere. Maybe not to the level it was a couple of years ago, but the high end is still there somewhere. How old is he now? He's like 36.
Let's see.
I think.
Justin Tucker is 35.
35. Okay. So, like, you're right. Like, he should be able to kick till he's 40. So I'm with you. Like, I think it's, I think you got to, I think if you're John Harbaugh, you probably have to lean on all the years of experience you have working with him and knowing what is best for him, whether it is to kick through it or whether it is to sit him down and give him some time, but clearly something's not right.
I mean, I don't know, but we'll move on here. But it's like,
but it's a different. But yes, like last night's different. If he makes his kicks,
yeah, absolutely. I mean, the complexion of that game is completely different. They can handle the end of the game differently. Yeah. The whole thing, it changes. But how many times do you want to put a guy up there and consistently make him deal with, just the magnitude of this, like, constantly having to be like, yep, well, messed it up. Yep. I don't know. That's a difficult spot. All right. We had a lot of big into Eagles Ravens here, but we're going to move on to the rest of the slate here. Bills 49ers 35-10. I mean, there's not really much to say here. I think I'm pretty ready right now to just kind of
Yeah.
kiss the 49ers
I
goodbye
think
at this
that's
point.
it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that was it. I mean, this is a game that Buffalo is built to win anyway, and you could say what you want about like the weather platitudes and stuff, but Josh Allen taking a lateral and diving into the end zone and stuff, and this team just clearly having fun and just romping over the 49ers. Christian McCaffrey getting hurt. It's a tale of two. It's a tale of two teams at this point, and I just don't think the Bills have, or the 49ers have, the health. I don't think they have kind of what it takes. And Kyle Shanahan's had these dip years between Super Bowls. He's had them before. And really, I mean, I guess you could say it's kind of been not amazing, but impressive that they've been able to survive for this long as sort of this borderline playoff entity. But as Seattle starts winning more games, logging more wins, the Rams got back to 500 this weekend. 49ers just like, I don't see a big win streak in them at this point.
Could I say something that might sound dumb?
Sure.
I was really impressed with like the way the Bills handled the footing there. Like a couple of those runs that they had, like where James Cook and Ty Johnson they were able to handle the conditions and stay on their feet. I don't know what it was. And this is just an aside to everything else, but I was impressed with the way that those guys handled the conditions. I thought it was really good all the way around. And the way they ran the ball, I mean, 220 yards is pretty impressive. Now, you could argue that the offense does have a little bit of an advantage on the defense in those conditions because they know where they're going and they don't have to pivot and move the same way that defense does. Yeah, the Niners, I said this last week. I probably, like the Niners starting to feel like an old prize fighter that's punched itself out.
Yeah.
And that just doesn't have anything left, and you can see the effort. It was sad watching Christian McCaffrey go down the way that he went down. And I mean, that's probably the last we see of him this year, which really sucks, but they don't have any bullets left. I mean, no Trent Williams, no Nick Bosa. It's hard to watch them play because like you're kind of like watching and looking for that spark and that thing that like sets them in motion. And they've been in this spot the last couple of years where they had bumps in the middle of the year, and sort of put their foot on the gas at the end and went. But it's getting late now. This is 7 losses. The division is still like weirdly in play because they're only 2 games back of the Seahawks. But I just don't know if that gear that we're waiting for them to hit is still there.
And they still have some talented players. Like, could you get one of these games where Fred Warner has a pick 6 and, you win a game like 13-10 at this point? Like, yeah. And they have a deep stable of running backs. Like, this is still a hard to defend running game, but it's not nearly what it was. And I will give, you give your proper homage to the elements. I mean, this is, it's hard to stop any offense. It's hard to stop a team that literally lives in this element, that plays in this element, that has, everything from the cleat length to the, they know everything about this field. They've played in all the snowy elements before, and the 49ers, they just look like they're on ice skates for most of the game. I mean, literally, and so, it's a tough situation to play in that game at that point in the season,
Yeah. And I mean, like, just to put like a bow on this too, like, I think we're starting to see like the Bills, like what they could become. And, like when we get to January where like all the transition, like a lot of it could come together. Like, who would have thought they would have been this deep at running back? You know what I mean? Like, James Cook's obviously great, but to have Ray Davis and Ty Johnson ready to go, I like both those guys can play, and then Shakir and Amari Cooper and Dawson Knox, like you see the weapons they have in the passing game, and no, they don't have a Stephon Diggs, but I mean, they're doing this yesterday without Dalton Kincaid. And obviously the way Josh is playing, and then defensively, like Rousseau makes another big play. And I just like, it looks like a deep balanced team that can beat you a bunch of different ways, And so are they the favorite in the AFC now?
We'll do the Chiefs
Okay.
here in a minute, but because there's an interesting note there, The Chiefs are the second worst 11-1 team in the history of like DVOA, which is defensive adjusted value over average. Second worst 11-1 team ever in terms of like just totality of performance.
Who's the worst?
There was a year that the Falcons were 11-1 fairly recently.
Okay.
And so they were worse.
Not their Super Bowl year.
No, not the Super Bowl year.
Okay.
So, but I don't know. I mean, I think it all depends on a lot of things, right? Could Buffalo get, could you get the Chiefs at Highmark Field? Could
Right.
you, all sorts of different stuff. I don't know. I mean, I think
Well,
that
the Chiefs slip up one more time and you will, right? If you
Yeah.
can keep winning. So,
yeah.
because they have the tiebreaker. So,
All right, let's do the Chiefs because I do think that there's some interesting stuff to get into here. They should have lost to the Raiders twice this year. I mean, if you remember the first Raiders game, Gardner Minshew fumbles the ball on a kind of a costly game-winning drive. In this one, the Raiders played awesome. Like the Kayvon Chazon had a great game.
Yeah.
He was bonkers rushing the passer. Like the Chiefs had to literally double him. They had like Samaje Perine back there chipping him, which like who thought you would have to double him? Max Crosby was in the backfield constantly. Patrick Mahomes does not look comfortable with this set of wide receivers. There's been a lot of these like kind of the acrobatic plays where he's escaping the pocket and he lets go of that ball and you're like, oh, this is going to be that cool completion for a first down again. And it's just not there. It's not landing in the right place. And Xavier Worthy, like, I guess you could say that, it's like sacks, like maybe these big kill shots, these deep kill shots come in bunches, but like the hit ratio in those is just awful. Like, but he feels open a lot,
yeah.
and
And
maybe
the
it's
timing is like weird with the two of them where it doesn't seem to have come together. I I mean, I get what you're saying. Don't you think the offensive line's a bigger problem? Didn't they like
yeah,
kind of show us that?
yeah,
Like in that, like you got DJ Humphries on the sideline in straight clothes, and they're so they're they've gotten to the point with their young left tackles with Wanya Morris and Kingsley Suimataia. I think I pronounced that right. Where like they moved Joe Tooney out to left tackle in
right.
this in game, you know? And so like I don't know, I think they're telling us with their actions where they're at with their offensive line. And, you know, you talked about how great Chason and Crosby played. Well, a big part of that was the tackle situation for the Chiefs isn't great. And it's not just left tackle either. Like Jawan Taylor hasn't really lived up to his contract at right tackle. So they've got three of the best in the league in the middle, you know, in Joe Tooney, Creed Humphrey, and Trey Smith. But they just cannot. I like this was like the first game where it was like, okay, like this has gone from a problem to like I don't know whether or not they're going to be able to manage this going forward.
Right. Yeah.
And
I
maybe
mean,
DJ Humphries is the answer. I don't know, but I feel like that's what they tried to do last year with Donovan Smith, and they were kind of flying by the seat of their pants with that one. And that was a guy who they had for the whole year. That wasn't somebody who they brought in like in November.
yeah. Yeah. It's strange that now, like, this is probably the year I think, and whatever, you can save this clip and you can play it when they win another Super Bowl. But like this, like last year, it was the wide receiver situation that came to a head past the point where they were able to do anything. Now it's the offensive line situation that comes to a head past the point where they're able to do anything. I thought it was interesting that like we're starting to see Noah Gray get a lot of these like shovel pass plays, like a lot of the Travis Kelce plays that he used to get. Is that an admission that maybe Kelsey's not quite what, he was anymore? And is this team just reaching a point of maturity where they have to churn and they have to turn it over? I don't know. But it's just weird to see. And
Yeah, I mean, like, and like even like their reliance on those three guys for the last few years, Mahomes, Kelsey, and Jones, right? Like the pass rush, they've got to like use Chris Jones in a lot of different ways to get the pass rush going, and even then, like, is it enough? And I think having a Mena who helps, and I mean, look, the Raiders aren't very good on the offensive line, so they did get it going against the Raiders, but I'm not sure how much that means. But I mean, yeah, you look at that like it's they're relying on players who are great, great players. Like all three of those guys are going to be in the Hall of Fame. And Mahomes is Mahomes, so he's separate from the other two. But like with the other two, it's like eventually Father Time's going to catch up with them, and both those guys are well into their 30s.
Right. I mean, I don't know what you say about Antonio Pierce at this point. Like, I feel bad for him. I mean, a lot of this stuff, everybody in that locker room took accountability for the botched snap. I think it was, they were probably trying to go on some sort of a silent snap at that point, and the center was tapped, and so he just shoots the ball back. And after Aiden O'Connell was clapping for the ball, but what a way to lose that one.
It's a rookie center. I mean, like I think that's part of the
Right.
deal. You know what I mean? Like, and they've had
Right.
so many moving parts up front. It's a different quarterback. So, Aiden O'Connell hasn't been in there on a consistent basis. Like, I just think it's sort of the price of being in the position that they're in right now, the price of relying on a rookie at center, the same way we talked about Caleb at quarterback, right? Like where sometimes in these sorts of situations, when the heat's really turned up, it's going to cost you.
Yeah. Yeah. Is there any way he hangs on to that job, do you think, Antonio Pierce in Vegas?
So, like, they're playing hard. They're really young. Some of the young players are developing. So, like, I think if Mark Davis wants to talk himself, I think it's like one of those things where Mark Davis can pretty much talk himself into whatever he wants to talk himself into. Does that make sense?
Sure.
Because on one hand, they're playing hard. He's a first-time head coach. He doesn't have a lot of experience, but you show him some grace. We're very youthful, and some of those young players are starting to develop. So that's one side of it. The other side of it is we're probably drafting a quarterback. He's looked in over his head at times. He struck out on his first offensive hire. Is this sustainable? And you're seeing the game management issues, So do we have something here that like we're looking at like, yes, he's going to develop into a top 5 head coach, top 10 head coach within 5 years? Or are you just trying to be fair?
Yeah.
And if the answer is you're just trying to be fair, that's when I think you talk about making a change, because I mean, the NFL is not a fair business. Like you got to do what's right for your team.
And maybe Tom Brady lurking in the shadows here a little bit as we as we wind out.
That to me is the biggest question, is like what Brady's role would be in all of this.
Yeah. I had heard not a very big role, but then but I saw the report from the Athletic that said the opposite, and hey, different.
But that's what we
people tell us
thought. So
different
we
things.
thought it wasn't going to be a big role last year, and then he like suddenly showed up at the last practice. So look, I don't know. Like it's sort of up to him, especially because he could show up like 36 hours before the Raiders' last game and say like, all right, I want to fire everybody. Let's start a coaching search. And Mark Davis would probably be like, all right, let's go. You know what I mean? Like,
sounds good.
So, yeah.
Steelers Bengals. This one was awesome in every way, shape, and form, and probably like the 49ers and the Bills. It just basically crushed Cincinnati's season and probably put them out of contention for making that playoff run that we all felt was inside of them. But what a confidence building win for Pittsburgh, where they're getting everybody's best shot at this point. They're 9-3. Russell Wilson is throwing for over 400 yards a game, and this defense is again, I mean, you give up a lot, but you still make those strategic holds when you need to. This team could make a very deep playoff run. Like this Pittsburgh team looks awesome,
Yeah. Yeah. And I think they know exactly what they need to be with Russell Wilson as the quarterback. They've gotten more out of George Pickens. They've gotten more out of Najee Harris. The offensive line is developed. You've got a couple of rookies, and this is without their first round pick, without Troy Fautano in there. They got 2 rookies who are starting and playing well. And then the defense is the defense. The defense is really, really good. And the defense is deep all over the place too. Like on the edge, they go 4 deep. How many teams can say that? I I don't know that the Steelers are some like all-time collection of talent, but I look at their roster and there just aren't a lot of holes, and they look like a team that can win games different ways. And even like pulling the Fields lever at the end of the game to close him out, and Fields like being able to get on the edge and so easily convert that. They've got a lot of things going for them. My bigger takeaway coming out of this is like I think like Joe Burrow has to be Superman every week for the Bengals to win, which like if I'm Cincinnati, I'd be real careful going, about like how lax you are about all of this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like if your ownership, like I don't know, man. Like all I know is that quarterback, like his primary objective is to win.
Yeah.
And like he's like Brady that way. He's super competitive. All that matters to him is winning, 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 winning. And so I don't think he cares about throwing for 350 yards every week. And I think some of the things that have happened the last couple of off seasons have kind of come to roost with them. They've gotten older on defense. Guys like Sam Hubbard and Von Bell aren't the same anymore. They've struck out on some draft picks. Like DJ Turner's probably a backup at corner. Cam Taylor-Britt had the pick six yesterday, but he's been very up and down. Miles Murphy hasn't given them much off the edge, which you would hope he would be the guy who would replace Sam Hubbard. And then they've got the contract issues with some of their bigger name players. Trey Hendrickson is still fantastic. They had a contract issue with him that probably won't go away. Jamar Chase, they're going to have to take care of him. T. Higgins probably gone after the year. I hope that organization operates like a championship organization this offseason, and that you do that by putting resources into the team. And I actually think that this is probably the time for them to build out their scouting department a little bit and like invest in the players and go pay Jamar Chase. Like I think Joe Burrow is going to be paying attention to all that stuff and how the organization handles all of that stuff. And if I'm a Bengals fan, that could be a little bit of a scary place to be because like that's the one guy you do not want to lose. You do not want to piss him off.
And let's go back to I remember talking to his dad about this.
And I'm not saying it's going to happen tomorrow, but like could you see us eventually becoming Matthew Stafford? Yeah, I think you could see that eventually happening.
Yeah. I remember talking to his dad about this, and his dad had vehemently denied the reports that Joe didn't want to play there coming out of LSU. He said that was never the case. Like he wanted to make this happen. He wanted to win there, and
he wanted to be the agent of change.
Yeah, and Zach Taylor too. I mean, that was a job that is a little further down on the list than a lot of these other hot coaching candidates. But Zach Taylor wanted to live in Cincinnati. His wife wanted to live in Cincinnati. Like that was the vibe that this team was built on. And they've been in the top percentage of free agency spend in almost all of the years that Zach Taylor and Joe Burrow have been there. They've been throwing a ton of resources at the offensive line. And, I think this is just one of those spots where, you feel bad for Lou Anarumo, who you assume is probably going to be the scapegoat for this season, but just the fact that the defensive personnel just withered, and, for one reason or another, you kind of just thought that some of these other guys were going to elevate and, you weren't able to get them going. But this game was wild to me because you were up 7-0 for most of the first quarter. You had that gutting pick six. Like this is a time to put your foot in the ground and go. Like they were playing really well against Pittsburgh. And then all of a sudden, after the George Pickens touchdown, like the lid kind of blew off of this game. And that shows. I mean, that's your thinness on defense. And that's something that they're going to have to address. All right, we got one more here in the, I would say, the main buffet before we get into
regular round.
Yeah, before we get into the the so-called lightning round, and that's the Cardinals and the Vikings. 23-22 Vikings over the Cardinals. This was such a fun game to watch, and biggest comeback in Sam Darnold's career. A big day generally for former Jets. But we'll get to that when we talk about Seattle. Biggest comeback in Sam Darnold's career. The Cardinals again, last week they were dusted up by Seattle in a heroic Leonard Williams game that kind of exposed some of the flaws in the run game. I thought the same thing happened there. James Conner was like, whatever it was, 67 yards. And I know that the analytics people will scream at me for saying this. And it is true. I get their point. But like when James Conner's a 100-yard rusher, I mean, this team is an absolute bulldozer, but they just didn't have what it took in this game. And I felt like they were a little beaten up in the run game, and that sort of slowed everything down. Marvin Harrison did not look on the same page with Kyler Murray, at least until the game got going and they kind of got onto the same page a little bit. But this one was, it's again, like this offense can look so good and so unstoppable and so unbeatable, and then all of a sudden kind of get their pants pulled down.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, I think the Cardinals think they're still like a year away. And you're right, like some of those things didn't match up. And I don't know what it is, because like you see glimpses of Marvin and who he can be. And maybe it's just a rookie thing, and we'll look up next year and he'll have 1,500 yards, and like the flashes become just who he is as a player. I think like Sam Darnold pulling his team out of the ditch again. Like, it was interesting because I do think like this is sort of like what's so weird to me is like the way that people change the way they talk about somebody when they change teams. Like very few people would have had any faith in Daniel Jones 2 weeks ago. Yet, like now, in the middle of a game, you go on social media and all anybody thinks the answer is for the Vikings is to throw Daniel Jones out there. It's like, what are you talking about? Like, is this the same guy? Do you like how you were talking about this guy 2 weeks ago, and now all of a sudden, like you want the Vikings to rush him out there? I think Sam's done a great job. I think Sam.
We are so unfair to Sam Darnold. We are it's like
everyone. I swear to God, it's ridiculous. Like everyone is waiting for the other shoe to drop. Like he has a bad quarter, and it's like get him out of there. I really don't understand it, but
every other top tier quarterback is allowed to struggle and go through periods of really bad games, go through bad seasons. But because Sam Darnold started his career with two crap ass teams, then all of a sudden we just assume that, he's going to be this terrible player for the rest of his career. He's a good quarterback, Yeah. It's ridiculous.
I mean, like, and consistently making winning plays in the clutch for them, and like the drive to win the game, and like converting on 4th and 5 to Justin Jefferson, and like the stuff he was doing at the end of the game. Like he's playing the position the way that he's being coached to play it, because of the experiences that he's been through. And I just think he's like, again, like, is he Mahomes? No, but he's a really good player. And like I think I just think like the perception of him isn't close to the reality. So, and the Vikings are 10-2 now.
Yeah, I mean, like, come on,
they're 10-2.
Like you can't. I mean, you can be 10-2 and have bad quarterback play, but like you don't. It's not bad quarterback play.
But they're 10-2 in like a really good division too. That's the other thing. Like they're 10-2 in a division with the Lions, the Packers, and say what you will about the Bears can come up and bite you. They almost did get the Vikings last week,
If the Bears are in the NFC South, we're talking about them being an 8 or 9 win team right now. And
Matt Eberflus is coach of the year.
I mean, it's just how it is. I think that I'm always for supporting our guy Sam Darnold. Arizona here, it gets interesting, right? And we'll do the Seahawks here in a second in the lightning round. But Arizona, can they possibly get it back together for a stretch run here that includes critical game against the Seahawks coming this Sunday, then the Patriots, then the Panthers, then the Rams, then the 49ers? Like, this is not a murderer's row at this point. I mean, this is a stretch of very winnable games. And yes, the Panthers are playing a lot better, and we'll get to them in a second too. But, I don't know. Like, this is, they can go out and get this thing. And to me, it's almost like if you're playing the Vikings that close, that bodes well for how you're going to play against Seattle, New England. Seattle a second time in 3 weeks. New England, Carolina. I don't know. I'm not ready to count them out yet.
No, I'm not either. Like I think they should at this point have earned our trust that they can rally and get it together. It's still a good team.
All right, so let's get to the rest of the Sunday slate in lightning round format. The Buccaneers and Panthers. I still am just blown away with how well Bryce Young's playing, and I should say that I wrote about Dave Canales as a great candidate before the head coaching cycle. I knew this was possible, and now that we see the wisdom behind the benching, now that we see the wisdom of allowing him to earn this back, I mean, he's I think top 2 or 3 in the league in big time throws over the last 3 weeks. He just looks like a different player. He's so confident, and they almost squeezed this one out. I mean, if not for a fumble in overtime, we might be talking about them knocking off the Bucs, which is it's a huge deal.
I correlate it to Anthony Richardson in Indianapolis. I know we're going to get to that, but I do think, like, especially for like a guy like Canales who's super positive, I think like benching Bryce basically established some level of accountability, and like he just like now that he's had to earn it back, like I think that makes him like it makes him very naturally a more confident player, and so like because he knows the job is his on merit, he's playing faster. And I mean, like he should have won that game. Like, like that, he makes the throw that puts them in field goal range. And yes, Thielen had to make a spectacular catch on the ball, but he makes that throw to put them in field goal range. And then, unfortunately for them, Chuba Hubbard has the fumble on the next play, but he put them in position to win that game. And that's 2 weeks in a row. Last week he did it against the Chiefs. Like where he's made the plays they've needed him to make down the stretch, and they lost the game, but it wasn't really his fault. So on his shoulders, like he put them in position to beat 2 perennial contenders over the last 2 weeks, which is pretty remarkable considering where the Panthers have been and what we've considered the Panthers to be the last couple of years.
With the Buccaneers, I mean, just getting to 6-6, and we'll do Atlanta here next, I think is important. Because as I've said all along, I thought Tampa Bay was going to catch Atlanta. I did not think that I did not think the Falcons were, kind of real. I always kind of saw some flaws in there. Mm-hmm. And now all of a sudden, this is a big win to get back. You avoid a very serious Baker Mayfield injury, which looked bad. Right. And ended up, not being, he comes back into the game and, does some Baker Mayfield
he said he thought
things.
it was his Achilles, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And not perfect, obviously, when he comes back into this game. And there's always going to be that element with Baker. But, I mean, God, that's a team that I don't want in the playoffs. I really don't. But, so Tampa Bay gets back to 6-6, 3-9 for Carolina, but a positive 3-9 for once. I mean, I had them projected at 4 wins this season. I feel like the OR calculator is starting to hone its ability. So it's good.
I mean, for the first time in like 3 years, whatever it is, like it does feel like the arrow is pointing up on the Panthers.
Let's go to, like we mentioned, let's do Chargers-Falcons next. So this it was a incredible defensive performance from the Chargers. So this was 4 picks on Kirk Cousins, a vintage Derwin James game where I love when he's at his peak. And we don't get peak Derwin James a lot, but when we do, he's an absolute game wrecker, health issues throughout his career, all that kind of stuff. But man, oh man, was he awesome in this game. And also, just the depth of this secondary, for years, Brandon Staley, Anthony Lynn, they tried free agency, they tried high draft picks, they tried everything to kind of bandage this thing and give themselves a tough, durable secondary. And then all of a sudden you get Tarheeb still in the 5th round of the NFL draft, and this guy is, not defensive rookie of the year, but, maybe in the top 12 of that, if you're talking about consideration. He's won like 2 games for these guys.
Right.
This is unbelievable.
And Cam Hart with was starting before he got hurt. Like that's another one in the secondary that's a young piece. And Joe Alt ready to go on offense. Ladd McConkey. Like they've got a lot of rookies who are playing now too. just like it feels to me like a lot of things are working for the Chargers, you know? Like they're very clearly headed in the right direction. They know what they are. Um, they're winning on defense. I mean, I think Herbert, you can look it up. I think Herbert had like 170 yards or something like that yesterday. So they're again, I think, getting more out of their quarterback by asking less of him. And I mean, to do this the first game after J.K. Dobbins gets hurt too, I think is significant based on how big a part of their identity J.K. had become. So first game, no J.K. Dobbins. The run game gets stopped in its tracks a little bit, like 56 yards and 17 carries, and they're still able to find a way to win. It's pretty impressive, and do it on the road on a short week on the other side of the country. And that's a little like detail here that you shouldn't miss, you know?
Yeah. Over on Atlanta's side, I mean, you can look at, and I have been looking back at the Cousins picks this morning. You can explain some of them away. I mean, some of them look like miscommunications, that they didn't look like that in real time. Like some of these throws are just like, oh my God, what are you doing here? But I think it looks slightly better on second watch. And Raheem Morris said like Kirk Cousins did everything right except for the turnovers. 4 picks is kind of a tough, I'm not the
it's like the Abraham Lincoln thing.
Right. I'm not a, hey, let's go out and start Michael Penix this week kind of guy, but I'm also thinking that we're not outside of that realm at this point. Like we are probably like another week or two away from seriously having to talk about it. I mean, it's no touchdowns, 6 picks, I think like 750 yards over his last 3 starts. I mean, this is not what you paid for. It's not what you signed up for. And he doesn't look like a good fit for this offense. And so I don't know what you do. Right. But do you change the offense? Or do you, because it looks like he kind of needs some short drops and he needs to be able to get rid of the ball quickly. Zach Robinson likes play action.
He can't move the way that he was able to move the last time he played in the offense under way back in Washington. So, although he played in a version of it in Minnesota too. So, I don't know. Like, because I would think like, Zach Robinson, Kevin O'Connell work together. So, like, it's a fair question. Like, what is it that allowed the Vikings to get so much more out of Cousins deep into seasons than the Falcons have so far? I think there are a lot of questions to ask. And look, Cousins' contract is tradable too. Like, that's the other thing. Is like a lot of the money is paid out in year one. So if you wanted to trade him coming out of this year, you probably could.
Do you send him up north to Brian Dable and help him resurrect the New York Giants? I don't know. Just a thought. All right, let's move on to our next game from Sunday. So we have the Colts and the Panthers
too, right? Like that was not a.
We do have to go faster. Yeah. We're not doing a great job.
We're screwing Shelby here.
Yeah, of course. He's used to it at this point. Colts Panthers. I'll just say this comes down to an absolute. Guts on the line call for Shane Steichen, and we go from Shane Steichen allegedly, ignoring Anthony Richardson and not having any interest in developing him to trusting him when the game is on the line. I think that we need to give him a little bit more leeway in terms of, maybe there was a method to his madness too, and sitting him for a couple of weeks and just popping him back in when the moment's right. Anthony Richardson doesn't look like a different player, but he is not costing the team games. I think he is a net positive at this point.
I think Anthony Richardson got a lot of benefit from the benching. Maybe some of the same reasons Bryce Young did. I think he went back and evaluated some of the things, and like he's actually like been at the building in all hours, which I know that's sort of a cliche thing, but like I think that
it matters to people.
He thought he was working hard, and I don't think there were poor intentions here. And then I think he realized, I think that the light came on for him as far as like what an NFL quarterback has to do on a week-to-week basis to be prepared. And then, I think he played well down the stretch. Like on that game-winning drive, there were a couple of bad drops where for a young quarterback that can be frustrating. You think you have the chains moved and then they're not, and was able to bounce back from some of those and get the team into the end zone. And the patience on the mesh route to Alec Pierce to score the touchdown, and then obviously like just bulldozes his way in for the 2-pointer. I think you can feel pretty good about where you are with Anthony Richardson coming out of everything he's been through the last few weeks.
I've said it all along. I think they're making the playoffs. I think they're catching the Houston Texans, but
Yeah, the Texans look vulnerable, I would say.
Yeah. We'll get to them in a second. Titans Commanders 42-19. I don't really know what you say. I mean, this was
Washington is back. Like it seems like they're where they were a month ago, and the
everything
3-game
seems
losing
all right.
streak was a blip, and Jaden Daniels is great again. All of it, yeah.
Yeah. Yada yada. The Titans are 3-9 at this point. Do you get is Brian Callahan good down there?
I think he's okay. Yeah.
Okay. I think that's
I've heard some of this stuff, but I think he's okay.
That's good. I think he deserves it. I think this team was a lot worse than I think a lot of people thought going into it. And when you try to band-aid some stuff going in, it's never good. Seahawks Jets 26-21. This game was absolutely batshit crazy. You had 3 fumbled kick returns by the Seahawks, 2 of which were lost fumbles. You had a Jets kickoff return for a touchdown. You had 2 blocked extra points, and you had Leonard Williams becoming the first player since 1982, Albert, to block a kick, record 2 sacks, and return an interception for a touchdown in a game. Geno Smith and Leonard Williams come back to MetLife Stadium to destroy the Jets. And it sucks too, because if you're the Jets, because this was the first time, like the first quarter of this game, take away all the special team stuff, I thought this offense looks cool. It looks like it makes sense now. Rodgers and Adams were working this RPO thing. Mm-hmm. They had a good thing going. A couple of really nice play calls from Todd Downing. I was like, okay, this all makes sense to me now. That all went right down the toilet in the second half of this one.
Yeah, the Jets are circling the drain, and like I kind of like where the Seahawks are. Like I don't know, like watching them on a week to week basis, like I think Geno like so often just gives them exactly what they need to win the game. JSN's gotten a lot better, and I think is one of the better receivers in the league now. You've got what you got with DK and with Lockett already, and then defensively, like I think they're getting. I would say like they're getting more difficult to play against, which is a hallmark of like those Ravens systems. You know what I mean? Like I think that Mike McDonald has them in a spot where he's learning how to use the different pieces and learning how to best leverage the talent on hand on defense. And I think that's starting to show too.
The Texans 23, Jaguars 20. I think everybody's going to talk about the hit on Trevor Lawrence coming out of this. I don't really know what to say other than, Azeez Al-Shahir, he apologized. We're expecting a suspension at some point. Danny Trevathan got 2 games, I remember, for the Bears for spearing Devontae Adams a couple of years ago. Yep. Do you get more than that? I think he should. My thought is that the NFL needs to provide some clarity on these things. They've been all over the place on ejectable hits, and this is a good chance to put their foot down and define that for people. I thought whacking him with the hard plastic brace on your elbow is kind of, you could say whatever you want, but if you didn't mean to inflict malice on that, there's 100 other ways that you can tackle a guy as he's going to the ground. Did you see Michael Strahan saying that he did this on purpose, by the way?
No.
There was some weird, like Michael Strahan was saying like he did this on purpose to like throw himself out of the game. And I was like, I don't know, if we're reaching that point, if we're reaching this point in the game,
because I don't get that.
There's a code on the field, and the code is like if you do something like, you're not going to be protected if you do, whatever. And so I don't know what it is. All I know is, this guy's had a history of some bad hits. He was only fined $10,000 for punching Roshan Johnson in the face. when Johnson wasn't even in a play when they were playing the Bears. So, I mean, this guy, I think, could probably benefit from being,
Sat down for a little bit.
From being sat down for a little bit. I mean, you can't play that way. Other than that, I mean, I don't know what to say other than like Houston is just barely surviving some of these games.
Yeah, they're scratching by. CJ doesn't look quite the same. I mean, I'd say their best offensive player right now is probably Joe Mixon, which is like I never thought I would have said that at the beginning of the year. The interior of their offensive line's been an issue. The defense isn't airtight. It feels like there's like a collective sophomore slump going on there that, I mean, put it this way, I don't think they're going to like lose the rest of their games, but would I be shocked if it happened? No. It's just, like you said, they're just getting by the seat of their pants too much.
Yeah. And we'll see how that goes. I'm saying I think the Colts are going to catch them. I don't know.
I mean, well, look at the rest of their schedule, though. Miami, which is a losable game, at Kansas City, Baltimore, Tennessee.
Tennessee playing spoiler at the end of that season would be delicious. Last game we have on here, Rams 21, Saints 14. I mean, if you look back on the history of games, this is not a game that you would write to your family and friends and say that you were there. But getting back to 500 is important for this Rams team. Matt Stafford, 183 yards and 2 touchdowns. Kyron Williams, 104 yards and a touchdown. I think that the Saints, there were sort of these inexcusable moments where Derek Carr's not getting rid of the ball in critical situations. You never want Taysom Hill, especially in a game where he was injured, to be leading the team in receiving. But Marquez Valdez-Scantling with 2 catches and 36 yards is your second best wide receiver and not by a wide margin. I think this probably puts an end to a potential Rizball renaissance here in New Orleans. And meanwhile, the Rams just kind of, they stay afloat,
Yeah, I mean, I think the only thing that can save the Saints right now is the division that they're in. And I mean, I guess if you look at it like a relatively manageable schedule the rest of the way, but I mean, it's hard to see them getting past like 6 or 7 wins.
Yeah. Well, that's it, Albert. It was a complete show, though. That'll do it. I mean, that was
I appreciate
a lot
the
of
therapy off the top, too. I needed to get some things out. I know I need to get out, but at least some of it got out.
I had a lot of thoughts based on how I was going to begin the show. I actually have no Ohio State or Michigan clothing, so I wasn't going to. I have a lot of college gear. I don't have either of them from any of those teams. So there was no thought in showing up here in yellow and blue or whatever they call their version of yellow. So there's a lot of different thoughts as to how I was going to begin the show, but just letting you talk it out, I think, was the most important thing.
Yeah, I'll get through it somehow. I'm not happy about it. Won't be happy about it for some time to come, but I'll be able to manage it.
We got some sick kids who are approaching the mic. My flu game continues, but thank you guys.
Yeah, good luck with that. Like that's the real battle here.
Yeah, we're going to go get some batteries. We're going to get Spider-Man going. We're going to get everything going, and we thank you guys. We'll be back next week.